Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. My name is Ella. Thank you so much for joining us today again. Welcome to episode 2, season 3 of the Humanitarians of Africa series, where we have been sharing impactful stories of different founders from across Africa. Today, I have all the way from Nairobi, Kenya, Damaris, who is here to share the story of her foundation that is working on women empowerment, girl child empowerment, and gender equality. Damaris, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon from Kenya. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Ellen. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you setting this up with Hexa Media Africa. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking time to be here with me today. Okay, so let's get straight into what we're here for. So who is Damaris? What does she do? What are her passions? Let us meet you, Damaris. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Okay. So my name is Damaris Mabeya. I'm Kenyan, and I run an initiative for girls in ICT. It's called Aminia Dada Innovations. So this translated from Swahili is to believe in young women's innovations. So the idea for me starting this initiative was because I realized that there was a huge gap for girls in ICT, girls in STEM, and specifically right from high school. You know, many girls who would take up science or STEM courses, even from high school and all the way to university, to colleges, to TVETs, once they graduate, they would be more hesitant to take up such careers. So then I sought to understand, why is this pattern recurring? Why, if you wanted to bridge the gender digital divide, you have to start from the root of the problem.
Yeah.
So this is where I started out this initiative for girls in ICT and STEM. And so far, so good. I have realized that there's a lot that needs to be done. There's a lot that's being done, but then we need to go the further mile through various tools, various models, specifically partnerships. You know, which I really believe in. As a founder, as a director, I have come to realize that so many people of goodwill, just like yourself, Ella, we met, from Cyprus to Nigeria, we met and connected. And because of the great work you do as well, you know, we were able to connect and understand how can we make more impact, specifically at the grassroots level where you work heavily as well. So this is who I am, and this is what I'm doing in my own little way.
Wonderful, wonderful. You seem to be doing so much work, and I love the fact that you were able to identify a specific problem in the community and then you moved on to trying to solve that problem. Great. So moving on, what is the impact so far? You were able to identify a problem that you wanted to solve. Now, the issue isn't even that girls are not being empowered or, you know, getting into the ICT field. The issue is they are not sort of bold enough to pursue a career in that field. So in your experience so far, what do you think is like the cause for that? And how has your organization been able to solve that problem so far?
Okay, so far, one of, like you rightly said, Ella, access is a huge problem. You know, specifically in developing countries. You know, in Africa we have categories of developing countries, least developed countries. Also within other continents you have small island states, landlocked countries. So in all these countries you'll find a similar pattern. And the pattern is the lack of accessibility. So in terms of access, we're talking about universal connection and universal accessibility. So if you're talking about opportunities, that if you don't have the access to information, immediately you lack out on the access to opportunities. So what I really appreciate mainly one of our partners is the fact that through partnerships, you're now able to come together and define a model whereby we are able to, you know, make our own program, develop it that is specific to those needs and the assessment that that has been done. So here I'm talking about, for example, one of the people where the office I'm at, I'm actually being incubated at the Kenya Red Cross.
Okay.
So now I have an office.
Nice.
So under the Kenya Red Cross, they have an innovation department. So as you would know from the Red Cross and the Red Crescent societies all over the world, they have this intention about going to the remote, inaccessible areas.
Yeah.
So this was an area where we both realized we could work together. So what we're doing together with them is through the innovation department, they have a lab, they have an innovation lab. So the innovation lab, they're taking out either youth, they have youth programs, they have women programs, they have mainly different kind of programs where they prototype their innovations. So through what we're also trying to bridge together is away from the cities and down to the grassroots. So for me, in my case, as a Kenyan, I would say away from Nairobi and out to the deep remote areas where we have issues on connectivity, we have issues on accessibility, we have issues on information. So here what you're trying to do is empowering communities through adoption. But when you realize that adoption cannot be taken up because there's no access, so then you go back to the drawing board and identify, how do you put up a digital innovation ecosystem that can now lead to incentivizing the investments to accelerate, to create value. So, it's a whole chain whereby you have to start right at the bottom of the pyramid. So through what we are doing, we are really heavily relying on digital skills inclusion. So these are digital and financial literacy skills. So through this, the girls and especially the young people, they're taken through a program where we identify what are they doing, what do they want to study. It's not a dictating, platform where we dictate to them, this is what you should do, this is where you should venture. So it really comes from them where their passion is. And then now we are able to guide and tell them, these are the opportunities in this field, this is what you could partake. So it's a discernment process for them as well, where they identify specifically the teenagers that, do I want to be in this career? What are the opportunities for me? Let me try and see what that looks out for me. So really, we are working with young people, and the idea is to get them to break off that myth that STEM is hard, tech is hard, ICT is all the myths around it, that it's very limited, the options are very limited for my career. So really just showing them also what are the options right now. There's so many platforms that you could venture in through tech. So that's precisely where I'm at the moment.
Wonderful. You're doing a lot of work. So in the midst of all this, I'm sure you must have experienced challenges having to communicate with these teenagers, because they're teenagers, they're young people, and some of them might be faced with indecision, some of them might be faced with fear, and all of those things. So how are you able to communicate with them and bridge that gap, help them understand that this is important? And what's the experience been like so far working with these young people?
Okay, so again, heavily relying on partnerships because I cannot do everything. So in terms of the team that I have, I'm really so grateful because I have a team of different stakeholders from different fields. So what now this does, it enriches the program in terms of, we have people who are career experts and they're doing this for the generation because they believe in it, and for them it's really, they want to give back to their community. For example, one of the founders that I really appreciate is one of the guys who's a cybersecurity expert. And for him, his way of giving back to the community is through mentoring. So now for someone like him, he comes with his experience from corporate, he comes with his experience from a completely diverse perspective. So now through persons like this, we are now able to speak to the students. For example, with the boys, I really rely on the male to also speak so that the message can get home. So one of the key strengths that we're heavily relying on really is through mentorship. And this mentorship is coming from a diverse range of population in terms of experts, persons who are willing to share their story, women in science who are willing to share their story, how they began, the challenges they faced. So for me, in that sense, I can say it's covered because of partnerships once more. So this also, enforces the idea that as founders, as innovators, as entrepreneurs, we really need to rely on partnerships, because then they cover up for your other areas that you could be lacking. And then you don't end up doing everything at the same time, but together you create that. So in terms of now for myself, one of the other challenges that I've faced is, just the whole idea, why did you start it for girls? Why didn't you make it just for the youth and for the young people? It's because there's so many things that can be done, but also there's so much you can do as a person. So you have to pick a niche area, but that doesn't mean that I'm not open to, collaborating and having value additional partnerships with other persons in the sector who are also working on this for boys as well. Thank you, Ella.
Wonderful. I know I'm laughing because I hear it a lot when people say, why women? Are women the only people? Are women the only people suffering or going through whatever? In fact, I'm a boy, I go through stuff, and people just make very funny comments, and I'm like, oh. But then okay, so I was looking through your website and doing some research, and I saw a phrase that really caught me. It says digital economic empowerment as a means to bridge the gender digital divide. So when you say digital economic empowerment as a means to, bridge the gender equality or gender digital divide, so lots of words there. What exactly do you mean by that? How exactly does gender relate with, the digital world and all of that, and all the digital empowerment? Could you throw some light on that?
Okay. I think for me, I'd speak also in the case of Kenya, where I am, is most people view the digital space as a space whereby you can have fun, be a socialite, be a celebrity, and get that kind of status. But for me, as an entrepreneur, I view it as a platform where it can literally transform your life and transform the opportunities for your business, specifically SMEs. Coming from the backdrop of COVID, we saw so many careers change completely that you cannot even identify these people anymore through strategic planning and just being calculative. So I get so broken when I see people not maximizing the space to better their models, to better their companies, to better their programs, to better their initiatives. So for me, it's that aspect of just drumming it and breaking it down, in the sense that for a young woman or a youth who's trying to work on something, then they feel, oh my goodness, I don't even have the capital. If you can just get access, it all starts with access. Like, we were talking a few minutes ago, Ella. So the digital innovation ecosystem really is built up on access. Once you have the access, then you're able to innovate. Then once you're able to innovate, you can develop a digital service or an application. Then that can, it's a building stone that now you grow the capacity. Once you grow the capacity, then broadly, the digital infrastructure is shaped up. Now then governments are able to talk about policy and regulation. We're now able to talk about cybersecurity. I mean, it's a whole ecosystem whereby you just have to be very calculative in how you want to penetrate it as a market, as an entrepreneur, for example, I would say. So for me, what I really wanted to do is to, at the basic level, talk about how do you position yourself, because then it's actually honestly very intimidating. Someone is like, where would I start from? I don't even have a website. I don't have a huge following on any social media platform. I don't have the cloud. I don't have, the resources to pay for this, for that, for interviews, for all these things. So for me, I just take it down to make sure you connect with where you are and build solutions. Solutions do sell themselves. That's how everyone starts, So it's really identifying the niche, then through that niche, working upwards through it. That's how I foresee it. And that's how that this is the only way to bridge the gap as it exists. I don't want to get so much into it, because I think for all developing countries, we really understand what it means to be part of to be isolated. So for me, it's more like we have all felt excluded in our own ways. What are we doing to be more inclusive in our spaces? Thank you, Ella.
Talking about inclusivity, how do you think Africans or Africa, in your own opinion, can leverage, technology and digital tools as a tool for economic empowerment? Because this is majorly what you do. So what do you think? Because I know that every African country has their own challenge when it comes to, making use of tech. I think Rwanda is even far above or far ahead of most African countries. But then in your own opinion, how do you think African countries can leverage technology for empowerment?
Okay. So I think one of the key things that we have to give it up to, like you said, countries like Rwanda, and indeed, is the fact that these countries are being calculated. They're being very strategic and very intentional. I was in Rwanda during the World Telecommunications Development Conference last year in June. And I can tell you the number of STEM schools that are coming up. There was a session on artificial intelligence. There's a big center that they're putting up. Wow. Like lots is being done on the tech sector in Rwanda. I mean, if you ignore it, then you're missing out from all the good things that are happening. So for me, just to reply to your question is, governments are putting up their front. Telcos and operators are also putting up their front. But I think for now, as the youth, we need to come out very strongly and be very intentional. One of the challenges that I face with the young people is they say, oh, tech is so intimidating, but like literally everything is tech, Ella. Look at the agricultural sector, look at education, look at the health sector. You cannot run away from it. You cannot wish it away. I mean, it's here to stay. I have friends who have made very good returns from being well positioned on e-agriculture. So my point is, we should not just wait for governments to talk about the tax and the regulatory environment. We should make it possible for them to understand that digital transformation is here. And what we want is, we want the government to automate all government resources, in terms of licenses, permits, to shorten the process of getting clearance to start a business. I don't know how it is in your country.
I heard how it is in Kenya. It's a long process. Really daunting.
I know. It's a daunting process. You have to go through several offices with the same form or different forms. And for each to get the stamp, you have to pay. So for me, I'd really wish to get to that level whereby all government services are online. Whatever permit you need, whatever form you need, it's all auto-generated. We cut the chase, At the end, you get your bill for everything. So you don't have to pay to this, to that, to this, Then also, like for me, what I'd also want to mention is we have like the digital ecosystem. It's forever transforming. I don't know any founder or any institution that has had the same strategy in ICT for 2 years even. Because it's forever changing. So you have to be, be willing to be adaptive, be willing to move with it. And also what I'd like to mention is, just the sustainable development goals, that guide and govern most of our work. In this, how are we positioning our work as well? So if we talk about ICT and we talk about opportunities therein, we need to be very intentional. Say with sustainable goal 1, no poverty. What does that mean? That means food security. People are able to feed themselves, they're able to sustain themselves. They, livelihoods are accessible, access to water. So for me, how I look at it is, we need to, what can I say? We need to simplify all these terms that seem intimidating. So ambiguous. We need to bring it down to our people and say, this is what it means for you at this level. Last year I had a program with girls, and we were talking about the budget. So when I ask them, like, how much do you know the government is spending in terms of this financial year, 2022, 2023, almost nobody got it right.
I don't even know my
Literally.
country's own.
You see, this is the conversation. You know, they don't need to understand the entirety of it, but for their sector, you know, for their sector, the moment you give them the figures in what it means for them, for example, in their federal states, you know, with their representation there, whether it's the executive or the legislature, how does it, you know, pan out for them? So for me, this is where I saw really there's a lot to be done, and it can only be done when it's simplified. When you take people reports, they're not going to read reports. They need to hear it in a very simplified manner, probably use infographics, be creative about it, you know, simplify the process, make them relate to it. Once they relate to it, then they'll think twice about it. If they don't relate to it, you have completely missed them from the conversation. Yes. Back to you, Ella.
You're very, very, very on point. Simplifying things basically in Africa I think it's a very difficult thing that we Africans find to do. Like, I don't know why we have to make things so ambiguous. Maybe because that's the only way we can, you know, steal funds and involve in corrupt practices. So when you make it so ambiguous, people will not understand what exactly you're trying to do. But simplification, automation is very, very important. And when I visited Rwanda, that was one thing that really shook me. I'm like, the way these people are so advanced in the things that they do, down to their schools. And a lot of African countries need to learn from this particular country called Rwanda. Automation is very key. Cutting to the chase, cutting all those processes. And you're right. You're very, 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 very right. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that.
Thank you.
So moving on to gender issues now, as a gender advocate and someone who has worked with a lot of girls, especially in Kenya, what do you think are like the major gender inequality, or let's say gender issues that are facing the country Kenya in your own perspective and through the work you have done? What are the major issues that are facing Kenya when it comes to gender inequality?
Wow, that is really broad. I'll try to shorten it.
Yeah, just
in the interest of time. So far, first I have to give it up to Kenya, like Nigeria and many countries. We cannot ignore the fact that women trailblazers who've gone before us have put in a good fight for women, for African women. And we can talk about this through the African Union Youth Division. They have a women economic cluster that the WAFA, Women, Economic, Youth, Financial Inclusion. So through such platforms, we have seen slow but progressive, you know, intentional thought towards having women entrepreneurs, specifically at the grassroots, enjoy the benefits of whatever work we are doing. So there's a lot of advocacy that has been done, and that for sure we have to give it up to them. There are many institutions, many organizations, many people of goodwill, you know, most even men who spearhead these campaigns, men who believe, men who understand what it means to have a digital ecosystem that is all inclusive, that women can have this space and thrive, you know, because they relate it to the GDP. So this is why they do it, because they understand if then we're going to increase the GDP of our country, it's in our best interest to ensure that both genders are equally represented and that all the work that is being done is factored in. So other than that, for what I'd say, that's what has happened in Kenya as well. There have been very many campaigns, intentional advocacy strategies that have been put up to just bridge the gap on gender equity. Now, in my case, what I'd say are some of the key issues would be the skills gap. You know, when you do assessments, when you do surveys, when you look at the numbers, they're chilling numbers, you know, in terms of the number of girls who drop out of school in those remote, inaccessible areas. Those stereotypes still exist. The stigma still exists. Specifically, I have worked with communities who work with young moms, teenage moms who got pregnant while in school. When they desire to get back to school, it's like everybody writes them off. It's like your story is done, you know, which is very sad because maybe they really want to, you know, make a difference of their life, make a change. But then it's like that door is completely shut. So for me, one of the key issues is really the norms and the cultural norms that affect gender inclusivity. And another one is something I really experience every day in my work. You know, it's like people automatically assume if you're working towards having gender inclusion, then directly you're fighting the men, you know, but that's not the case. You know, even in my work, I have lots of men who really appreciate what I do, and they do support in their own ways whatever work we are doing. In terms of even just the outreach, you'd find it's them who are talking about Aminia Dada Innovations more than I would even be shouting. So I think also what we need to change is just the idea that working with this community automatically translates that you're not for this other community, you know, Ella. Like if you tell me I like fufu, I tell you, oh, you have a problem with rice. So I think that's also one of the challenges that we experience. And then the last thing really is just the goodwill, you know, the political goodwill. Political goodwill is very crucial, and that's why you'd see in countries that there's intentional goodwill. You cannot compare to the distance that they can cover in terms of just the ground. And here for me, I'm specifically talking about now connectivity in this case. We might have a good model, we might have a good program that you want to access the remote areas. But if we don't have the last mile connection, it remains to be just that. It remains to be just an idea. So really it's just coming across how then do we put out our policy recommendations? What are the key priorities? And, you know, for yourself, I think for Nigerians, as you prepare for elections, this is the time to look at the best candidate who would also, you know, factor in this. And I wish you guys well. Ella, thank you.
Laughing when
Africa is watching. Africa is watching.
Nigeria, but
the world.
Africa is watching. We hope that our elections will turn out well and the best candidates will be selected. So finally, before I let you go, are there any specific programs or events or anything that you're sort of fundraising on that you need the support of the general public?
Okay, so I need a lot of support in terms of just I can say in-kind donations, financial contributions. We accept everything at this stage. So I'm currently incubated at the Kenya Red Cross under the innovation department. So of course, for large grants, they have to go through the Kenya Red Cross. But for small grants, small donations, they can come directly to me, because this is then how we are putting up the institution and running the programs. So what we are working on, as Ella, you know, on Saturday is the International Day for Women and Girls in Science. Yes, we have an activity for that. Then we also have an activity for the International Women's Day. We have an activity for African Day of the Girl Child. We have an activity for the International Day for Girls in ICT. So all these activities, we would really appreciate any form of support from well-wishers. Other than that, we have now our regular activities at the grassroots, where now offsetting that would also go a long way. The budget is not so expensive, but in terms of now mobilization, because that means I move from Nairobi to these areas, and I can't do it alone. I have to have a team, for example, in the needs assessment and the surveys. So any form of donations is highly welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing. So guys, you have heard from Damaris, any form of donation in cash, in kind, and it can be your skill that you want to volunteer to the organization. As usual, the way or the connection methods, the way you can reach out to Damaris is on your screen and also in the description box. Please feel free to send an email, or a message, and they will definitely hook you up with all the options available to you. Damaris, thank you so much for joining me here to share your amazing story and sharing some insights about technology and the work we do in Africa. I really had an amazing time today sharing with you.
Thank you so much, Ella. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much to Hexa Media Africa.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Do not forget to share, like, drop a comment on what touched you most in this session, and let me know how you feel about the Humanitarians of Africa series. Looking forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Thank you, Ella. Bye.